Assalamu alaikum, little ones. Welcome back to old Baghdad. So today we're going to tell the story of the sixth journey of Sinbad. And it begins by Sinbad saying, "Know, my dear friends and companions, that after my return from my fifth voyage, in my pleasures, enjoyments and happy contentments, I forgot all of my past hardships. I remained in this state of joy and gladness until, while I was sitting relaxed and satisfied, a number of merchants came to me, having obviously just returned from a voyage. I remembered my own return and how delighted I had been to rejoin my family, my companions and my friends, together with the pleasure I had experienced at returning to my own land. I felt a longing for travel and trade, and so I made up my mind to set out once again. I bought splendid and valuable goods suitable for a voyage, and having loaded my bales, I travelled from Baghdad to Basra. There I found a large ship. On board there were traders and men of importance, who had with them costly goods. I stowed my own with theirs on the ships, and we left Basra in safety. We sailed on from place to place and city to city, trading and looking at foreign lands. Fortune was with us. Our voyage went well, and we made profits, until one day, as we were sailing on our way, the captain suddenly gave a great cry, threw down his turban, struck his face and plucked his beard, before collapsing in the centre of the ship, overcome by distress. Merchants and passengers gathered around him to ask what was the matter. "You must know," he told us all, "that we have strayed from our course. We have left the sea on which we were sailing, and entered one whose ways I do not know. Unless God sends us some means of escape, we are all dead. So pray to him to save us from this." He then got up and climbed the mast with the intention of lowering the sail, but the wind was too strong and the ship was driven back. While we were near a lofty mountain, the rudder was smashed and the captain climbed down from the mast, reciting the formula, "There is no might and no power except with God the Exalted, the Omnipotent," and adding, "No one can ward off fate. By God, we are in mortal peril, and there is no possible escape for us." Everyone on the ship wept for themselves and said their farewells, convinced that their lives were at an end and there was no hope left. The ship struck the mountain and was dashed to pieces, its timbers being scattered and everything in it being submerged in the waves. The merchants fell into the sea, and some were drowned, while others, including me, came to land by clinging onto the mountainside. The island on which we found ourselves turned out to be a big one, and was the site of a large number of wrecks. The beach was full of goods thrown up by the sea from sunken ships, whose crews had been lost, the extent of this jetsam being enough to bewilder and confuse the mind. I climbed to the highest point there, and as I walked I caught sight of a freshwater spring gushing out from the base of the mountain and flowing to a point opposite it. All the survivors from the ship who had come ashore scattered throughout the island, and dazed by the quantity of goods and effects that they saw on the beach, they started to act like madmen. For my part, I saw in the middle of the spring great numbers of gems of all sorts, precious stones, sapphires, and huge pearls fit for kings. They were lying like pebbles in the bed of the stream as it flowed through the low ground and the ground surrounding. The spring sparkled because of the precious stones and other such things that it contained. We also discovered there a quantity of the finest Chinese aloes wood, together with Kumri aloes, as well as the spring that produces a type of raw ambergris, which oozes out like wax over its sides, thanks to the sun's heat. Sea creatures then come out and swallow it before returning to the sea, and when it becomes heated in their bellies, they vomit it out and it solidifies on the surface of the water. Both its colours and condition change, and the waves drive it on the shore, where travellers and traders who recognise it collect it and then sell it. Pure raw ambergris has not gone through this process, overflows to the side of the spring and solidifies on the ground. When the sun rises, it melts again, producing a keen scent which makes the whole valley smell of musk. And when the sun leaves it, it solidifies. The place where this raw ambergris can be found is completely inaccessible for the large mountain range that rings the island is unscalable. We continued to wander around the island, looking at its resources that Almighty God had provided there, but bewildered by what we could see of our own situation and full of fear. We collected some provisions by the shore and started to ration them out, eating a mouthful every day or every second day to avoid using up our food and then dying miserably of starvation and fear. We would wash the corpses of all of those who died and shroud them in what clothes and materials were washed up on the beach. Many did die, leaving only a few behind, as we had been weakened by stomach pains caused by our exposure to the sea. Within a short time, every one of my friends and companions had died, one after the other, and had been buried, leaving me alone on the island. Of our large store of food, only a little was left, and I wept over my plight, saying, I wish that I died before my companions, so that they could have washed my body and buried me. But there is no might and no power except God, the exalted, the omnipotent. Soon after this, I got up and dug myself a deep grave beside the shore, saying to myself, when I sicken and I know that death is at hand, I shall lie down in this grave and die there. The wind will keep blowing sand over me until it covers me, and so I shall be buried. I started to blame myself for the folly that had made me leave my country and my city in order to travel to these foreign parts, in spite of what I had suffered on my first, second, third, fourth and fifth voyages. On every single one of them I had been faced with terrors and hardships that grew worse and worse each time. I did not believe that I could escape to safety, and I regretted having set out to sea again, telling myself that I had no need of money, for I had plenty, so much in fact that I could not have spent it all, or even half of it, in my lifetime. That was enough, and more than enough. Then, however, I started to think the matter over, and told myself, the stream fed by the spring must have an end as well as a beginning, and there has to be a place where it flows into an inhabited country. The right thing for me to do is to make myself a small raft, big enough for me to sit on, which I can take down and launch onto the stream. I can set off on it, and if I find a way out, then God willing I shall escape, and if I don't, then it will be better to die there than here. Having sighed over my fate, I got up and worked hard at collecting timber from the island, both Chinese and Kumari aloe wood. What I got I lashed together on the shore with ropes from wrecked ships, and then I took matching planks from them and set them on top of the timbers. I made the raft just about as broad as the stream, or a little bit less, tying it together as firmly as I could. I took with me a store of precious stones, gems, cash, and pearls as big as pebbles, together with other treasures from the island, as well as some good, pure, raw ambergris. This I loaded onto the raft, together with everything else that I had collected from the island, and I took all of the food that was left, and then launched the raft on the stream, adding 2 pieces of wood, one on either side, to serve as oars, following the advice of the poet who said, leave a place where there is injustice, abandon the house to lament in its builder. You can find another land in a place of that one, but you will never find another life. Do not let the blows of fate concern you. Every misfortune will reach its end. Whoever is fated to die in a certain land will die in no other place than that. Send out no messenger on a grave matter. The soul's one sincere adviser is itself. I set out downstream on the raft and wondered what was going to happen to me. I reached the place where the stream entered an underground channel in the mountain, and as the raft came to this passage, I found myself plunging into thick darkness. The raft was swept on by the current until it got to a place so narrow that its sides rubbed against the edges of the channel. While my head scraped the roof, I had no way of going back, and I started to reproach myself for having put my life in danger, telling myself, if this is too narrow for the raft, then there can be little chance that it will get out, and I cannot go back, and there can be no doubt that I will die a miserable death here. As I lay face down on the raft because of the lack of space, and drifted with no other means of telling whether it was night or day because of the darkness under the mountain. I was terrified, and in fear of my life, the further I went along the stream, which widened at times only to narrow again, the darkness made me feel extremely tired. I couldn't resist falling into a doze, and so I went to sleep, face downwards. How far it travelled while I slept, I could not tell. When I woke, I found myself out in the light. Opening my eyes, I discovered that I was on a broad stretch of shore, with the raft moored to an island. There was a crowd of Indians and Abyssinians around me, and when they saw me get up, and they came to me and spoke to me in their own tongue, which I couldn't understand what they were saying, and I kept thinking this was all a dream, as I was still suffering from the effects of the hardships that had overwhelmed me. Since I couldn't follow their language, and could make no reply, one of them approached me and said in Arabic, "Peace be on you, brother. What are you? Where have you come from, and why are you here? How did you get into this stream, and what land is there behind the mountain, as we have never known anyone coming to us from there?" "Who are you?" I asked in my turn, "and what is this land?" "Brother," he answered, "we are farmers, and we had come to water the crops and the fields, and we cultivate. When we discovered you asleep on this raft, we took hold of the raft and tied it up here, so that you could get up at your leisure. But now tell us, why have you come here?" "For God's sake, sir," I said, "bring me some food, for I am starving, and after that ask me any questions that you want." The man hurried off to fetch food, and when I had eaten my fill, I relaxed, regained my composure, and recovered my spirits. I gave thanks to Almighty God for all his mercies, and was filled with joy to emerge from the river and to have reached these people. I then told them everything that had happened to me from start to finish, including my experiences in the narrow stream. After talking among themselves, they told me that they would have to bring me with them in order to show me to their king, and so that I might tell him what had happened. So they took me, together with the raft, and all the cash, goods, gems, precious stones, and jewellery that was on it. And when they brought me into the king's presence, they told him about me. He welcomed me warmly, and asked me about myself, and what had happened to me. After which, I told him the full story of my adventures, from beginning to end. The tale filled him with astonishment, and he congratulated me on my escape. I then went to the raft and took a large quantity of precious stones, gems, aloes wood, and raw ambergris, which I presented to him, and he accepted, showing me even greater honour and lodging me in his palace. I associated with the leading citizens who treated me with the greatest respect, and I did not leave the palace. Visitors to the island would ask me about my own land, and in return for what I told them, I would ask and receive information about theirs. One day the king questioned me about my country, and about the rule of the Caliph and the lands of Baghdad, at which time I told him about the justice with which he controlled his state. He was impressed by this and said, "By God, the Caliph acts in a rational and an attractive way. You have endeared him to me, and I intend to prepare a present for him, and to get you to take it to him." "To hear is to obey, master," I said. "I shall bring it to him, and tell him that you are an affectionate friend." For some time I continued to stay with the king, enjoying the greatest honour and respect and leading a pleasant life, until one day when I was sitting in the palace, I got news that a number of townspeople had prepared a ship with the intention of sailing to the region of Basra. I told myself that I should go with them, as I would never have a better opportunity than this, and so I immediately hurried off, kissing the king's hand, and told him that I wanted to leave with this group on that ship that they had fitted out, as I felt a longing for my own people and my own land. "Do what you like," he told me, adding, "but if you want to stay with us, you'll be welcome, as we have become fond of you." "You have overwhelmed me with your kindness and generosity," I replied, "but I feel a longing for my own people, my country, and my family." When he heard this, he called for the merchants who had fitted out the ship and instructed them to look after me. He made me presents as well as paying for my passage on the ship, and he entrusted me with a splendid gift for the Caliph Harun al-Rashid in Baghdad. I took my leave of him and all of the friends whose company I had frequented, and then embarked with the merchants. We set sail, relying on God, and had a pleasant voyage, with fair winds passing from sea to sea and island to island, until through our reliance on God we arrived safely at Basra. After I had disembarked, I stayed at Basra for some days and nights, until I made my preparations, loaded my goods, and set off for Baghdad, the city of peace. There I had an audience with the Caliph, to whom I presented the king's gift, together with a full account of what had happened to me. When I had placed all of my wealth and goods in store, I went to my own district, where I was met by my family and my friends, and I made gifts to all my family, distributing alms and giving presents. Some time later, the Caliph sent to ask me the reason behind the gift that had been given to him, and the details about its source. I told him, "By God, Commander of the Faithful, I don't know the name of the city from which it came, nor how to get there. But when the ship on which I was travelling was sunk, I came ashore on an island with a river in the middle of it, on which I launched a raft, and I had made for myself." I went on to repeat what had happened on my voyage, how I got clear of the river and reached the city, and what had happened when I got there, and why I had been sent back with a gift. The Caliph was astonished by my tale, and he ordered the recorders to write it down and store the account in the treasury, so as to provide a lesson for all who might read it. Then he showed me the greatest favour, and I stayed in Baghdad, living as well as I had done before, and forgetting all my sufferings from beginning to end, while I enjoyed the pleasantness of lives and delight. This, then, my brothers, is what happened on my sixth voyage, and God willing, I shall tell you my seventh, which was even more strange and remarkable than all of the others. Sinbad the sailor then ordered tables to be set with food, and when his guests had dined with him, he ordered that Sinbad the porter be given 100 mithqals of gold. The porter took the gift and went off as the other guests dispersed, astonished by what he had heard. He spent the night at home, and then, having performed the morning prayer, he went to the house of Sinbad the sailor, who, when all of the rest of the company had assembled, began to tell them the story of his seventh voyage, which we'll tell tomorrow.